All right, here are some tabulate corals over time. So some of them take the form of long tubes like this. Some are like little chains. We used to call these chain corals. You get those in the Devonian. Others will grow exclusively on other organisms. Like this one is pretty common on brachiopods. Um, and then you'll get others that are colonial, like this. So each of these is kind of in business for itself, but they are loosely connected. These little side tubes. So you tend to get coloniality with tabulate corals as they exist in the Paleozoic, which means being colonial was baked in right from the start. And if they have tiny body size, I guess that makes sense. Rugose corals are quite often solitary, and they pick up coloniality a little bit later, if I remember correctly. And it's always just one branch that's sort of colonial, and the rest of them are individuals. Yeah, rugged individualists. Yeah. Here's the structure of a tabulate coral. So they will have holes in the wall. Mural means in the wall, and so they have mural pores. And so these are going to be on the inside of the organism, and so this is going to share nutrition between members in the same colony. The colony is going to grow so that they're all about the same height. So it's really only the pores in the top layer that are going to be functional at the moment. The ones in the bottom are just there. They're decoration. They're going to the coral is going to move up either each year or part of a year, and so it's going to make a new floor which is higher. It's going to increase the size of the walls around it, and yeah, the organism is going to always be on top. And the inside should be closed off forever, and nothing should be happening down there. It's essentially just dead mass, but it's moving the coral a little bit closer to the sunlight, where the food is, or where some of these may have had photosynthetic photosymbionts in there. So here are more of those little examples of tabulate corals. Some of them look like a beehive, some of them look like a little chain, some of them look like little branchy tubes, but still connected to each other. What you see during their development is that you get development in of the hard parts, and so there will be little walls that are attempting to divide off the chamber. So the soft parts of a tabulate coral may be quite similar to the soft parts of a rugose coral, and these are both versions of tetracorals. So why shouldn't they be similar? They're just the dominant ones at the time. When they're building in those little septa, those little walls to help sort of wall off the different mesenteries, you'll find those tend to be pretty big and move in right toward the center, maybe even connect at the center in rugose corals. In tabulate corals, they tend to be just a little bit at the side. And the idea is that tabulate corals are probably the original ones. They have a pretty old fossil record, and you'll get little barbs on the inside like this. And the idea is that those eventually turn into the more complete tabuli of some of the early rugose corals. And tabulate corals are among the ones that we think are automobile, or able to move around on their own. And so here are some examples of these guys. And I think these are Mississippian. These are a mix of Mississippian and Pennsylvanian. So Carboniferous mostly. But there were a number of these. And they certainly don't appear to be rooted to any one place. They don't show any of the sort of attachment structures we get from other corals. Shown at the top, this is corals at feeding time, and this is when they're still hungry. They're all open, and you can see their little mouth in the center. And then what these will do is they'll actually close, use their muscles to close on a little food morsel, which will then be passed inside the mouth and digested. These particular tabulate corals have hollow chambers inside, some of which connect inside of the cups, and some of which may connect to the outside. And would presumably have something like little tentacles on them for movement or fending off potential predators or parasites, something like that. Here is a very early tabulate coral from the Ordovician, back when rugose corals were very rare, and you can see this is pretty typical. So we've got little layers dividing off the old living space from the new living space, and we've got little tiny septa, just barely, that sort of stick out just a little bit into the center. Here, let's zoom in there, and you can see a couple of them. There we are. These little sort of sharp bits coming off the side like little thorns. And so we think those might have the same function as the later, longer septa in some rugose corals in helping to sort of anchor the places where the different chambers, mesenteries, are divided. So, yeah, tabulate corals. We only have a few from sites where we normally go, where I normally go, but they're important in the fossil record. And yeah, so what defines them? Well, they've got mural pores. They've got those little structures on the inside, like little spines. Here we go. Yeah, some of them appear to be automobile. Other than that, they're fairly similar to rugose corals. They tend to be colonial. They tend to all be colonial, whereas rugose corals are quite often solitary. What do we think, or how do we think rugose and tabulate corals are related, at least according to that hypothesis, which comes from the Treatise on Invertebrate Paleontology? It looks as though tabulate corals may have come first, and rugose corals may be a branch that came out of those, sort of a specialized branch. We will talk about those more, I promise. Yeah. How are they similar? They're both tetracorals, meaning they have 4 initial septa that come in during their development. How are they different? There are no mural pores in colonial rugose corals, as far as I'm aware. So that is a difference, and other than that, rugose corals tend to have longer septa, but that's more a difference of degree than something that's really, truly, totally different. Tabulate corals tend to have very small individual corallites. Rugose corals can have quite large individual corallites. I've got one in my office that's about that big across, which is a monster of the Paleozoic. What's the evidence for motility in some tabulate corals? Well, they don't have, and we covered this in an earlier lecture, but they don't have an attachment point, like an attachment scar, and they do have these little holes, which are connected up to tubes, and the tubes connect up to the center of the animal. So this animal is able to, just like a turtle, it's able to stick its little boop, 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 little appendages out, and then presumably it can move along a little bit. We're reconstructing the movement because these have been dead for a while. Tabulate corals are totally extinct. Yeah, so they go extinct right around the same time as the end Permian extinction. There's a little time right after the end Permian extinction where for a few million years there are no coral fossils anywhere that anyone has found yet. Maybe someday they'll find some. And the corals that appear on the other side are hexacorals. So something has changed. Something is different. Yeah, that's an interesting story in its own. All right, I think that's plenty. Thanks very much.